Hello folks, we're having some technical issues here. Just bear with me a sec, will you? Hope everyone's good. These bloody captures that you have to do, which just have you do them over and over and over again. I'm trying to access the chat. Unbelievable. So I can't. Come on. This is just ridiculous. Here we go. Okay. You're all there. Okay. Just need a second here to reorient myself. Good Lord. That was an ordeal. You know, what's the deal with these captures where you have to select, you know, how many bicycles in an image or whatever? Like, who are we helping here? Are we just training the AI, or are we actually securing ourselves? There you go. Political talk for the day. Yeah, I don't think it's related, Margot. It's really frustrating, because it's one thing to ask you to do one capture, but when it's like over and over and over again, and then you select all the bicycles, and then it says select more bicycles, and it refreshes the amount of bikes and the... Good Lord. All right, we're off to a good start. Okay, let's draw. Let's try to draw. I hope this is not an omen for what this session is going to be like. I would imagine not. I would hope not. But you know how these things go. All right. Unbelievable. Philosophy corner. Don't get me started. Emmy, don't get me started. You guys haven't really seen the really ranty side of me, where I go off on tangents, which I am known to do. Yeah, exactly. You can't even find the things that they're asking you to select sometimes. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, let's put it behind us, shall we? Let me start the timer. Let's do, what will we do? We're going to do something different, a 12-minute pose. How about that? Okay. Why 12? There's no reason. Other than it's not 10 and it's not 15. Great model today. We've drawn her before. Love, love, love the shape language that she brings to the conversation. Let's get in some of these long rhythmical lines. Manubrium, head of the humerus, and then this arm is going across this way, coming up. Maranta as well, good to hear it. I think, yeah, look, we're in good company. Rib cage. This leg's coming towards us. Knees sitting about there. Iliac crest is going up this way. You can actually kind of see it. It's almost like with her tummy coming down, this outer edge coming off the rib cage kind of sets that perimeter for where the iliac crest then goes down that way. And we've got this great compression right here, sitting across there and then coming across in her leg there. Really just lovely. Capture, yeah. Did I say capture? Capture? No, I don't think so. I think I said capture. You heard it that way. Although very similar, in fairness. And somewhat meaning the same thing, right? At the end of the day. Then this arm going up this way, so holding on there. See a nice pectoral kind of come down this way into the mass of this breast, sitting out here. I'm not going to commit too much on where the breasts are. I'd rather get in the width of this arm first. Bicep or top arm, part of the arm there. Forearm going away from us here. Wrist sitting right about there. Somewhere in there. And then the lower part of her arm, so we got deltoid sitting in this top quadrant up here, and then it's quite low down here. It's quite a lot of mass to the arm, kind of sitting there, about there. Deltoid, coming in, now we have a bit of compression here. And that actually falls across the form that way. Let's find our center line on our navel. Navel sitting right about here. Let's find our topography. It's doing something like that, right? So now we have that, those things measured out. I think that this is roughly right for the mass of the breast sitting in there, kind of like so. Soft transition from the rib cage down to here, down to the iliac crest, and obviously we've got this kind of thing going on too. Halfway on the time, but am I halfway is the question. Just have to be. All right, so that's all looking pretty decent. So maneuvers here, we said, right? Clavicle. So sternocleidomastoid coming up this way. Okay. So here we've got the oblique, which is kind of soft actually. We know it's there, and then obviously coming in, meeting up with the gluteus, and then down into the thigh. Something like so. Bicep coming up and meeting up with the deltoid. So in there. It's going to cross this way. I'm just going to push a little bit here. So rest is sitting in there. Just pushing and pulling a tiny bit of a measurement here. Something like that. Something like this. Some really subtle kind of direction changes you want to try and be aware of and hopefully bring into the work here and there. Pull her in here a little bit on the rib cage, just ever so slightly. And then that will have a ripple effect on some of these ideas too. Coming down like so. Oh, I've only got 30 seconds. Will we go over? That's the next question. You know what? I don't think so. This can just be what it is, an unfinished drawing. Let's get in a couple of small ideas here just to bring a little bit of mass. Biceps in there. Brachialis, something like that. I'm happy with my sketch. It's so different from the model. That's good, right? Certainly not bad. That's fine. If you're happy with your drawing, the model and the reference served its purpose, right? It's irrelevant. Unless you were specifically saying, I want to capture the likeness of the model and the model's pose, then you would have, you know, then maybe it's not so successful. Depends how you want to frame it. Okay, I think I'm going to call it there. 13 minutes. Okay. If this stream only goes over by 1 minute of its original length, we'll be doing well. Or it's okay. We got this next pose is a doozy. We'll need to move to there you go. This is a deviation by less than 10%. Well, if we want to get all engineering, we could say, well, what are our tolerances, right? Would that be engineering talk? I think it would be. Are we within the parameter of our tolerances? If you are, then that's all that matters. I think that's going to be as far over as I'm going to go with my board. It's enough. I'll try and keep everything in frame. Matilda, I was catching up with some old streams and actually drew this model yesterday. Awesome. Yeah, we've drawn her probably twice before, I think. And each time we've actually done different poses. For this session, I actually, well, to be honest with you, for lack of, you know, an unlimited supply of great poses, I went back and I kind of did a best of from those different previous streams. I pulled, I think, what, 6 poses that I think we've drawn them all before, but I just kind of, they're ones that I like. And it'd been a while. I checked the dates on them, and I don't think we'd done these particular ones in a good bit of time, so I figured it would be permissible. Laurie says, London Andrews, question mark. What a great choice for a model. Is that the model's name, Laurie? If it is, then you're telling me something that I didn't know, which is great to know. So if that's the case, that's really cool. She's a great model, isn't she? Something about, you know, obviously she's slightly heavier than what we normally draw quite athletic people, once again, for lack of variety in these reference packs for the most part. So she's slightly heavier than what the models that we normally draw, but she's really, the shape language is just really, it's just all there. It's a great set of photos actually, because they're all really well lit too. We've got essentially one light source, right, or one dominant light source, and there's a very clear kind of idea of what's in light and what's in shadow, and then reflected light, obviously. Yes, her stage name. Well, that's great to know, Laurie. Thank you very much for that information. London Andrews. You know what? Sorry guys, I'm going to just type that down quickly. So I can maybe find her on Instagram or the likes. Cool. All right. Noah says, I'm doing my first live model drawing. Do you have any tips? Yes, I do have a few tips, Noah. Yeah, let's talk for a second about this. Be careful, most of her works are not this mild, but great model anyway. Thanks for the heads up, Laura, it's okay. I'm sure it'll be fine. Yeah, I do have some tips for live model drawing. Firstly, get there early. You want to get a good seat. There's a chance, what would be one of two things. The model will be either, there'll be chairs all around the model will be in the center. That's one option. The other is the model could be on a platform or in a staging area, and you're sitting in a semicircle. The model is going to have a tendency to want to pose for what they deem to be the front of the front of the stage, let's say, right? Now, okay, if it's a circle, there's really no right or wrong place. But generally speaking, if it's a semicircle and you're right on one of the flanks, right, or left or right of that semicircle, you're probably going to end up getting a lot of like weird angles, or let's say the less ideal angle for a pose, right? So get there early, get a good seat. If it's a circle, there is no good seat, right? You're just at the mercy of what the model decides is the front. So that would be my first thing. Secondly, be prepared for it to be very different than drawing from reference. I think most people agree it's quite a bit harder drawing from a live model than drawing from reference. And I do have another piece of advice. What was my other piece? Yes, the other piece of advice is bring a clock or a timer. So if the model says this is a 15-minute pose, they'll probably have a little stopwatch, which they'll be able to see beside them, but you'll have no idea when the time is, what the time is looking like, how much longer you have. So it's a private session, it's happening in a friend's home. Well, but that's fine, but these same things apply, right? Like you'll still probably be in this situation, one of these scenarios. But bring a clock. So if the model says it's a 15-minute pose, start your stopwatch and you know how much time you have. Rather than relying on the model just saying, okay, time's up. And you're like, yeah, but I was just 5 minutes into starting to render shadows or whatever. So those would be the things off the top of my head. And I'm sure more will come up, but I'd say let's draw. Constantaneous question, Rich, to understand a human body part, arms, hand, leg, foot, etc., should I draw 4 different things of the body part to imprint on my brain memory for future drawing memorization? Look, it's one approach, isn't it? And it's not to say that if you did that, you wouldn't get results. Maybe there's a bit of exaggeration with 400, but maybe not. Look, for some things, you're going to have to do that more than for others, I would say. Like if you're studying anatomy, find an anatomy book, do studies out of the book. Nothing wrong with that. It gives you the great thing about studies, and you know how I'm not huge on studies. Let me start the clock and start drawing. But the one great thing about drawing master copies or studies is it forces you to slow down. And it forces you to observe on a level that you very likely might not if you're just kind of reading from the book and not actually drawing. So yeah, I would say, do master copies. Yeah, but also I think you're just going to find as you do more of this, in my experience, what tends to happen is you get a pose and you see enough of a reoccurring thing where you are asking yourself, what's going on there? that, you know, when you're then not drawing, let's say if it was like a live model session or whatever, when you're not in that situation where you're under pressure, to just open an anatomy book and kind of take a deeper dive. Because you simply won't know. You see, this is why I don't like the idea of just like getting anatomy books and going through them right from cover to cover kind of thing. Because there's going to be a lot of things from anatomy that you're going to use almost on every single drawing. And then there's going to be things you almost never use. So where do you want to divide your time? My thought would be to divide your time on the things, or use your time first at least, on the things that you encounter a lot. Then you can worry about being a, you know, hand and leg specialist or hand and foot specialist or whatever it might be that you want to kind of get better at. But you're going to get far more mileage out of knowing generally where the rib cage is in the upper torso than how many muscles there are in the forearm. Do you know what I mean? Yes, I'm oversimplifying it, but I think the point holds true. Okay, so we're getting in the large ideas here. Just kind of, you know, just doing that. And he's going to be about here. He says, it seems my arms keep coming out like tubes. Love the way you capture them with a couple of little accents. Well, that really comes down to, obviously, you know, it's interesting. I had to write an email yesterday where someone was kind of asking about understanding anatomy on a deeper level. And I was thinking about it. It's not just about knowing the anatomy. It's then about knowing how and when to apply that knowledge in a way that contributes to the drawing, right? What you don't want is a drawing that basically just states a series of facts. Does that make sense? You want a drawing that hopefully does more than that. That would be my thinking. Navel's about here. All right, let's find the mass of the breast. So once again, while the angle was different, same kind of philosophy as we've discussed in the past. What we're drawing here is a mass that is sitting on top, obviously, of another mass, which is the rib cage and the pectoral muscles. So don't just draw like the bottom line of the breast, so to speak, and just think, okay, well, my job's done here. No, you want to be thinking of it in terms of what is this overall structure and how is its weight distributed across the form. Okay, so mine is in completely the wrong place because I kind of like where this is at. Okay, that'll get us in the ballpark for now. Yeah. Then that rib cage is coming down this way. Okay. I don't think I even said how long this pose would be. Or did I? I'm thinking probably we're going to end up going 20 on this. It's quite a lot to map out, isn't it? It's okay, so I'm just kind of tweaking measurement just a little bit here and there. Okay, something like that. Then she has this slight overhang there, and then coming in. I think I need to make the legs longer, probably out to about here. Let's see. Let's see. Okay, I think I'm going to start to tie down here, because there's a few things I just want to kind of understand before I make other choices. Center line, let's just find that just generally. Okay, I'm actually going to use this passage down off her rib cage and down her stomach as my main point of measurement. I may live to regret this, but let's give it a go anyway. Something like that. Yeah, that'll actually help as we make more important decisions. Hey Rick, all my tubes look like arms. Oh, someone else was like, all my arms look like tubes. Yeah. Well, you have the easier job, maybe. Not if you're trying to create tubes. All right. Ben says, I've drawn a lot from life and I find it not as interesting as reference. What is the way that you make studying from reference more interesting, or what is your advice to be more disciplined about study from reference? Well, here's the thing. I think that personally, look, I think there's a lot to be said as you're developing to be working with a live model. But I think that there's a lot of advantages to be had from working from reference. One being that you know, you can have more interesting poses that maybe a live model just simply wouldn't be able to hold, right? Whereas you can capture a moment in time with photography, and you know, it's just it's easier in that respect, right? So I think just generally the overall, the content just tends to be can potentially be a little bit more interesting than drawing from life. I also find drawing from life, and I say this carefully because the wrong person's hear it and they think it's applying to them. Generally speaking, I find that there's not an abundance of great models. There's a lot of models, and there's a lot of okay models, but there's very few models that you get that start posing in front of you that you go, oh wow, okay, this is someone who really understands what it is that they're doing. Once again, I'm going to be making a lot of generalizations here, but you know, being prepared to take your clothes off in front of an audience is not a prerequisite, or it's not the only prerequisite for being a figure drawing model. And yet I've met and worked with models that seem to think that that should be enough. And then they come in and they sit there and they make the most uninspired, boring poses that I literally can't be bothered to draw. There needs to be a two-way communication, two-way dynamic between a model and an artist. And a model comes in and just sits there like this for 45 minutes and brings nothing to the table. I have no time for that. With reference, I can be very selective about what it is that I draw, and when I draw it, right? I'm not at the mercy of having to be at a figure drawing session. In saying all of that, when a model does know what they're doing in a live situation, that can be a hell of a buzz. I've worked with this fantastic London model. I've worked with several great London models. I've worked with some not so great London models. There is a guy, an actor, his name is Robin. His name's Robin. I don't recall his surname off the top of my head. I think, honestly, on Instagram, I think he's like Robin Actor Model, something like that. He's one of the best figurative models I've ever worked with. But he's an actor. And he also, I think he's done a lot of mime and that type of thing. And so he understands how to bring story into a pose. He understands how to bring narrative, right? And character and personality and everything else. And he just exudes personality in his poses. Like, sometimes they're quite quirky, but in a good way. And, you know, working with someone like Robin is absolutely just a treat. You know, he really, really brings it. But you know, when you get a model that's just, as I said, just kind of comes in and sits down and seems to think that that's enough, it can be really frustrating. Okay. So what would be my advice to be more disciplined about study from reference? Sit down and draw. Here's the thing. I've said this before, and I don't want to just be, you know, I'm clearly in a ranty kind of mood, but I worked as a professional artist ever since I would, like, you know, before I left high school, right? And when you're being paid to draw, you don't have an option of whether you're feeling it someday or whether you show up or not, right? You're being paid to show up and draw. And you need to kind of take that same philosophy into your practice. Am I feeling it today? No. Tough shit. Draw. You want to get better? Draw. Simple. It really is, and I think that there's, I see constantly and I hear constantly of a long, very complex list of reasons why people can't practice today or can't do it or whatever it might be. Look, that's going to happen. It's going to be times when that's unavoidable. But generally speaking, no, just stop talking, sit down and draw. Here's the thing also I think you notice you get kind of clued into from being a professional artist is there's no perfect environment, perfect scenario, everything's perfect. You say to yourself, oh, when I've got all of these things in place, then I'll be ready to draw. Stop. You'll never pick up a pencil. If you're waiting for everything to be perfect, you'll never do it. I have drawn in some, as a professional artist, I have had to draw in some funky environments, let me tell you. It's part of the job. It's like, yeah, look, this isn't great. Is it conducive to me being my most creative? Hell no. Is that relevant on any level after they've agreed to pay me? No. They've asked me to come and do a job. Now, obviously there's exceptions to that. If it's literally impossible for you to do your job because of the environment you're in, it's one thing. But people love excuses. People love reasons not to do things. And look, I do it myself. I'm terrible for procrastinating, don't get me wrong. I'm talking a good game here, but like I'm as guilty as the next person. But if I have enough days where I can be disciplined, more than I'm procrastinated or lazy, then there'll be progress. Right? We're at 18 minutes already. All right. How did you make money from art in high school? I started, yeah, you can blame the capture for the ranty mood, Lulu, you're right. My phrase for that is sat there like a bump on a pickle, exactly, yeah. How did I make money in high school? Well, I started working in animation when I was 15. So the long and the short of that story is basically when I was in, what would that have been in high school? I don't know what the American equivalent is or whatever, but when I was about 15 years old, just before the summer holidays, it's not unusual for schools in the UK to have you go do work experience, right, at some business, local business or whatever. So I picked an animation studio because I already knew that I wanted to work in animation. I said, can you use me? And they were like, well, we'll have you come along. We'll find something for you. And as it turns out, I had taught myself how to do cell painting, like back in the day when you'd paint on the acetate cell. So I could already do that. So my first day there, they said, well, what can you do? And I said, well, I can cell paint. And they needed people. They really needed people at the time. So they got me straight onto a production, like literally that first day. And that work experience came to an end, and then they said, well, look, do you want to work during the summer? So I worked during the summer. And then they said, do you want to continue working when you go back to school? And I was such a terrible school student. I basically worked more that final year of school than I did actually go to school. I actually ended up making a deal with the school that they allowed it. It's a long story. Anyway, and I ended up like kind of never really going back to school. The deal with the school was as long as you sit your exams, we'll let you do this. This was the 80s, it was different back then. And I've never even picked up my exam results from high school. I have no idea. So, that was my path. And then I went from that commercial house and worked at a few of those, and then I ended up going to Spielberg to work on American Tail 2. And then I had American citizenship, so when I was 17 I moved to LA to work on a film over there. And lived in LA for the next 25 years. So there you go. But I don't think you could do that these days somehow. Anyhow, okay, so what are we doing here? So we have our large ideas down. I think it'd be nice to put some shadow on this, right? Yeah, let's do that. He basically said, screw school, who needs that? I was such a bad student, Lulu. Here's the thing, and maybe it's why I've kind of gone to some degree into education or to teaching myself now, is I had just a long list of really bad teachers in school, in hindsight, right? Like, yeah, I was a terrible student, in fairness. I had one good teacher, which was human biology of all things, and I aced that class. But the teacher was incredible. But I was terrible at all the other disciplines. And I was back in the day when nothing was diagnosed. There was, yeah, you know, you were either thick or you were smart, and I was in the thick camp. And that's a rather crude way of putting it in today's day and age, but that's how it was looked at. You know, I was just stupid in their minds. And it wasn't until I left school, started working, and actually started studying music that I discovered for the first time what a great teacher could be, and basically how you need to learn how to learn. And it wasn't until I started studying music that I had teachers that were sufficiently good where they kind of helped me understand that concept of learning how to learn something. And it does make me wish I'd had that at an earlier age, because, you know, things could potentially have been very different if I'd had that kind of mentorship or guidance from a younger age. So yeah, that's why my relationship with school, with education, was so fraught. Like, you know, that was one of the reasons I learned cell painting, right? Like, I taught virtually, pretty much, essentially taught myself. And this was back when you didn't have internet or anything. But it was just because it was something I wanted to learn, and I got decent at it, you know? And it's made me really cognizant and aware of when I see good teachers, or when I hopefully understand, you know, I think I'm fairly decent at teaching, because I think to some degree because I had such bad teachers growing up, and luckily found the right ones at the right time. So yeah. I wish you would do a self-podcast and interview yourself. You know, unfortunately, Margot, I think the podcast is it's not going to continue. It is funny though. I was, you know, Doug was editing for me, and he said, you know, you'd be a great guest for your podcast. I don't really know if that's possible though, is it? Maybe I'll end up on someone else's podcast at some point. Who knows? The difference between you and the next person is that you're aware of your weakness, and that can be an attribute. Yeah, possibly, honestly, possibly to a fault. Like, I'm incredibly self-critical, and I second guess myself constantly. I have the worst case of imposter syndrome in the world. I have my whole life. And yeah, you know, I think childhood and stuff like that probably contributes to that somewhat, possibly. But I think that even though I have it maybe too much, I do think that having that kind of awareness of what you can, your own weaknesses is useful. If it isn't crippling, which it can be. All right, let's get some tone in this. We've been going at this one a while, but it's been a bit of fun. Yeah, there you go. Rocky. Train hard, see results. Train like there's no tomorrow. Yeah, I think so, to some degree. Like, you know, you could get into a whole nother, like, nuanced conversation about burnout and pacing yourself. I think that that's important. And I think maybe that happens too. Like, this coming full circle to what we were talking about is, you know, I think some people, they go, I want to learn to draw, and they go at it full force, which is great, but without realizing that, you know, there's weeks, months, and years ahead of development as an artist that you're going to need to pace yourself. But just, you know, just show up. I think it's so important. Just show up to the dance, and you'll be amazed at what you can get done. It's not always easy, though. Human nature is to, you know, take the path of least resistance, I think, to some degree. And it's very hard to not choose that path sometimes. And I think, you know, it can almost go the full circle the other way. We live in such a fast-paced society these days, and everyone is, you know, like, just everything's extreme, you know, extreme work ethic, extreme this, extreme that. It's like, it's exhausting. Just stop. Not everything has to be extreme. Just steady. It's consistency. That's the key. Consistency. It doesn't matter what you're learning. Just be consistent. All right. Not loving this drawing, if I'm honest. Yeah. Always check the screen to see what it looks like there, because sometimes it gives you just a fresh pair of eyes. This is another one of those that, you know, like that other drawing. The blend, the tone is all just a little bit on the weak side. Almost needs a whole nother pass to punch it up. Well, it does. Maybe I'll do that at some point. Yeah, you could really go to town with the tone on this drawing. But we're already 30 minutes in. So I'm going to keep that one as homework, and I will plan on maybe taking this one a bit further. Yeah, let's call it there. Huh? I don't like that. Yeah, not crazy about that. All right. When I draw from life, it has multiple spotlights. How would you deal with complex lighting for a 15-minute pose? We actually talked about this, Ben, literally last stream. I tend to ignore, generally speaking, unless the lighting is perfect in a live figure drawing session, which it most likely won't be. Like, you know, you go to these figure drawing sessions, they're held in town halls and the likes, and they've got basically just strip runs of fluorescent lighting and maybe like one weak little light hitting the model. These are terrible lighting situations for us to find ourselves in. What I'll usually just do in a situation like that is I'll resort to conceptual lighting, and I'll ignore the lighting on the model to some degree. If you're curious about what I had to say about that, Ben, go back to the last stream and just flick through it, and at some point you'll see me drawing cylinders. At that point, just rewind a little bit. That whole section I talk about conceptual lighting. All right, next pose. Got another potentially heavy-duty pose here. Richard, what is the art name measurement for the snail spiral shell composition? Oh, you mean the Fibonacci sequence. I'm guessing you mean Fibonacci sequence and the golden ratio. Yeah, like I don't have the golden ratio thing memorized. The real, just like the general bullet points with the golden ratio works great for film because of the aspect ratio for the cinema. But basically the golden ratio is finding that sweet spot. So like, rather than centering your character like, you know, bang in the middle or slightly off, you know, find the third, right? Like, so you could say, like, if you look at a lot of like setups for films, this point right here will be huge, you know, a character sitting here or standing here. This one, same kind of thing. This point here could be, you know, camera starts here, comes to here. But these are all built up on the golden ratio and the Fibonacci sequence, and somehow into this whole little thing, a big spiral kind of fits, right? I don't know what it looks like off the top of my head. That's the golden ratio. And the Fibonacci sequence is basically a series of numbers that you find in nature. I'm not going to begin to explain the Fibonacci sequence to you. Just look it up. All right. Bernoulli spiral. I don't know what that is, Margot. Maybe you're right. Oh yes, where did I come up with that? Okay. You're very welcome. Okay, next pose. Yeah, look up the Fibonacci sequence, golden ratio. And I think there's a lot to be said for the golden ratio to a point. I think it's yeah, it certainly has its uses, but you know, it's not one rule that you can just use for everything. But you know, just there's a lot to be said for just generally thinking about, you know, especially if you want to get in, like, to avoid too much repetition in things, like even repetition. You know, if you're, no matter what you're drawing, 3 strands of hair, make one of them a different length to the other 2, that type of thing, you know what I mean? Okay, so legs all attached there. I think iliac crest is going to be kind of coming up this way, somewhere in there. So this leg is coming towards us, knees about here, going down this way. And then this other knee, probably sitting about here, right? Thank you, Antonella. Appreciate it. Yeah, this cylinder's coming towards us too. Sitting in here. Something like that, and then this leg is coming down this way. She is obviously sitting on a chair, for those who don't see the reference. Navel's sitting about there. Yeah, center line coming down like this. Okay. You can kind of see the oblique sitting there, iliac crest here. Rib cage. Rib cage is coming down this way. Kind of sitting there, right? Must be. Side of the leg there. Okay. Something like that. It's a great starting point for learning compositions, as they do, and later on winging it kind of seems better. Well, look, yeah, there's this whole book's written obviously on the subject of composition. But there's a few very simple rules that will get you an awful long way, like the rule of thirds, you know, or at least get you some of the way and to start thinking in those terms. For those of you who's studying film or animation or whatever, if you ever really want to get a sense for what cameras are doing, this is a bit of fun. Just take a piece of like magic tape and draw a tiny X on it and just stick it on your TV screen or your computer monitor, and you suddenly become super hyper aware of how much the camera is moving, or how the camera is moving across a composition. Just a tiny little cross in the center of your screen. It's a lot of fun. It really helps you understand how cameras are used to move around a shot. So there you go. Bit of a laugh. Yilan asks, hi, I'd like to ask, do you count how much head lengths fit into the body length? No. Don't know if you were here earlier, I was ranting. Well, that's another classic rant. No, I don't prescribe to the heads high method. I concede that yes, so many heads or fractions of heads will fit into the full length of the body. I personally find it a completely useless form of measurement in practical terms when drawing the figure. And also working in animation, I've never once seen the heads high thing used in any meaningful way. You'd see it on model sheets all the time. Oh, this character is X amount of heads high. And it was just not a form of measurement that people use in a practical sense. I'm sure I'll have someone rail against me for this opinion, but I don't care. It's the way I feel. Also, and I mentioned it in another video, depending on when you were born in history, people had different idea of how many heads high the human figure was, right? Depending on the aesthetics of the time. So, you know, like, it's been, you know, anything from like 8 to 9.5 heads or something, depending on where you were in history, or, you know, 7.5 to 9.5, something like that, depending on what was the aesthetic standard of the time. So, yes, you could do a scientific kind of formula for it, but when are you going to use it? When is it going to be a point of measurement that's actually practical to use? I would argue probably never. But I also don't prescribe to the school of, you know, size measurement. I hate is a strong word. I don't care for that formula or that process, that method. To me, it doesn't. It holds no interest. It's a different school of thinking that prescribes to that. Yeah, but like Lulu, how, like, the whole heads high thing, like, it's only, you could only argue that there is any real use for that if you're drawing a character that has got no distortion on them, either through camera or through foreshortening or the likes. And yes, I know that there's a clumsy form of measurement you can do to work that out, but it's just not practical. It's not practical. If you've got this reclining pose that we're doing right now, for example, explain to me how you're going to do that, use the heads high method in any meaningful way to contribute to the measurement of the drawing. It's not going to happen. So there you go. That's my feeling. It might be difficult if you're trying to draw Napoleon. You know, Napoleon wasn't short, apparently. he was average height. Apparently it was an English news article that was written about him that described him as basically a short, angry little man, where that kind of rumour originated and kind of stuck. But apparently, yeah, he wasn't short. So there you go. Leaf says, what about using head length as a base unit on each model with the extended arm thing? There's 2 head lengths to the foreshortened knee. If it helps your process, by all means. I have no interest in starting to think in those terms, to be honest. Just doesn't work for me. But sure. And look, will you find some small exception where it's applicable? Possibly. But it's certainly not a method that I'm going to encourage people to waste time with. There's probably art teachers out there all upset with that statement, but I really don't care. Because I'm right. Yeah, that capture really did throw a spanner in the wheels today, didn't it? In general, I don't like measuring, especially not for figure practice. Here's the thing, Leaf. I would say I'm constantly measuring. I'm just not measuring in the terms that we've discussed, right? As far as using, I'm a huge believer in relative proportion and measuring things off each other. Just not the type of measuring that we've discussed, right? But I'm measuring all the time. The measuring's important. Just how you decide to measure, which matters, in my opinion. Right? Makes sense? Hopefully. Yeah, exactly. Ben says, would you say there's a distinction between observational and structural drawing? Is the head's high just about training observation? I'm sure I'm sure it would be claimed to be one of the tools used for training observation, Ben. Sure, that argument could be made. I would just argue that there's better ways, right? That's all. Distinction between observational and structural drawing. I believe that there can be structure in observational drawing. There should be structure in observational drawing, so I don't think the two are necessarily separate ideas. I messed up the breast. No, yeah, me too. Measure once, cut twice, and it's still too short. Well, it is good advice, generally speaking. Because you can't undo that cut, as I have found out the hard way. All right. I'm actually probably just going to draw down to about there because I really want to focus on all the business here. All right, let's put some tone on this thing. There's some core shadow. Cast shadow here. And turning into core shadow. Off topic, a lit candle is pretty cool for the mood while sketching. Flammable paper nearby for whatever reason. You like to live dangerously, Lulu. Speaking of which, when I started working in animation, everyone would smoke at their desks and you'd literally be like lit cigarettes near piles and piles of animation paper. I'm surprised it never ended badly, honestly. Or in like the cell painting department, they're using like industrial alcohol and all these chemicals and people just smoking away while they're working. It was a different time. Ben says you can't really exaggerate with observational drawing, like continuous line. Hope to combine with structure. I'm not quite sure I'm getting what you're saying there, Ben, to be honest. Anyway, let's keep going. OSHA violation incarnate. Not in those days. Guys, I remember when you could smoke on airplanes and cinemas and buses. Yeah. It's kind of mad thinking back now. At the time, no one batted an eye. It's kind of crazy, really. Alright, this music needs to go. Driving me nuts. Alright. Yilan says, at first I learnt to count with the height of head, later I noticed that this did not agree with reality. Exactly. Sometimes the torso is shorter and the logs longer, vice versa. Well, some art teachers would argue, no, you know, if you stripped away, like, you know, everyone's essentially the same proportions. It's all, but you're right, there's the practical use of something, and then there's the textbook analogy or, you know, description of something, and they don't jive together. They don't work together. It's just not practical. Got a lot of tone on this side of the leg here. A less lazy version of me would try and find something interesting to do with that, but I think I'm just going to leave it all in shadow. All right. Hard to believe we used to do that. If you've ever watched Mad Men, it just blows my mind. Yes. My dad lived in New York in the 50s, and from what I understand, that's pretty much how it was. People chain smoking and afternoon cocktails were, they weren't, you know, they weren't afraid of the minibar. All right. Back in the 60s, they had a nuclear jet engine that would spill U-238 dust into the air. Really? Don't know about that. That sounds terrifying. Are fish and chips just a different way of saying breaded cod fillet and French fries? No, Constantaneous. I would say no. For a start, French fries and chips are two very different things. French fries generally thin, generally speaking. Chips are generally thick. As far as breaded cod fillet, maybe technically you could say it's the same thing. Like, yes, it's a you know, well, it's not always cod for a start. It could be a number of different fish that you use in fish and chips. Yeah, I guess you could call it breaded cod fillet, but somehow it doesn't sit right with me. All right. This could go in here and just start cutting into the form ever so slightly to pull out some of these lights. But I think we've all probably seen enough of this drawing. Yeah, let's call it. All right, let's move on to the next one. That I don't like. That is more of a half tone. There, that helps. Okay. Cool. I like that. Discussions about fish and chips. I might have fish and chips tonight, actually. I have to pick my wife up, and we did talk about Thursday, maybe hitting the chip shop after I get her. 2 British meals I know of. Fish and chips and what, shit on a shingle? What's that, really? Now there's a term I don't know. Shit on a shingle? I'm assuming that's what the self-censoring is there. What is shit on a shingle? Is that some old English term that I don't know of? Maybe. Could be. All right, we've got another... I know what a shingle is, but I don't know that term. Also known as creamed chipped beef on toast bread. Well, this is not an English thing. That's not a British meal. Creamed chipped beef? Basically beef stroganoff with crackers. Okay, none of that is not English food. Like, sure, it's made here, but that's not an English dish. Stroganoff sounds German, doesn't it? Or Belgium or something. I'm guessing, I have no idea, but it certainly doesn't sound, it's not English. Army thing, got its name due to its looks. Nice. The army will do that. Maybe I'm wrong and it's US. Possibly, but I lived in the States for a long time. Maybe a born and bred American can chime in. Margot, talking of, my mum used to serve the chipped beef here in the US. What is chipped beef, though? What does chipped mean? All right, I'm confused. I'm going to keep drawing. I'm out of my depth with this conversation. All right. Let's do it. We need to speed things up. We've got half an hour left. And we've got 3 poses. Shall we aim for 3 10s? Let's aim for 3 10s. You know how this works. All right. Couldn't really tell you, but I ate it. Yeah, Margot. That's what you do when Mum makes food. You eat it. You don't always have to be a huge fan. Well, I'd say, yeah, generally speaking, my mum wasn't a great cook, but she wasn't a terrible cook. Her food, it was functional. Got the job done. But you know, if I'd had any high hopes of coming home to the smell of baking in the house or anything like that, well, that wasn't going to happen. Okay. I said 15, right? Some people on a Navy ship just cooked beef strips and cream with black pepper and toasted sliced bread and placed hot cream beef on bread and served it on plates. Constantaneous. You've gone too deep. No, well, look, maybe it was good. Doesn't sound great, if I'm honest. Sounds like it keep you alive. Into the humerus, coming down this way. Clavicle's kind of pushed back, right? Clavicle. Well, sorry, not clavicle, right? This manubrium probably sitting about here. Something like that. Past muster, as they say. Fair enough. Might have to try making fish and chips one day myself. Constantaneous. You could do that. You could absolutely try making it, and you may be a good cook and you may be able to figure it out. But I'll tell you this. When I lived in the States all those years, you know, as one is inclined to do, you tend to go to the local, well, we used to go to the local English and Irish restaurants and cafes and bars, and you'd always want to try, you know, you'd have a hankering for home food. You'd always want to try their take on it. And all I can say is, it would be very rare that they would get it right. They'd do a version of it. You get fish, technically the fish, battered fish and the chips. There's always something a little bit off. There was one place that was great. Irish pub in San Francisco. What's it called? Something like O'Grady's or something like that. They did a bang up fish and chips. That was as good as what you would get here. But generally speaking, bit of a mixed bag. Bit of a mixed bag. So your success of doing it, you see, if you're going to do it successfully at home, you would probably want to at least try a really good version of it so you know what it is that you're actually making. Because you could do fish and chips if you've never actually had proper fish and chips. You might go, well, this is great. I've made fish and chips. But you might try to serve it to an English person there, and they would say, hold on a minute, Constantius. We need to talk. I thought you were my friend. Why are you doing this to me? Be like me saying, oh look, I can make New York pizza here in England, no problem. It says pizza, right? Is it? I don't think so. How long did I say for this? 10, didn't I? Good Lord. Here I am. Drawing like it's a 20-minute pose. Oh, let me see what I can get done. So I got so emotionally involved in the fish and chip conversation, I forgot that I'm actually here to draw. All right. Kind of tricky, we've got so much in very heavy shadow. That this whole area obviously is in shadow, for those of you who can see the reference, which I'm not feeling inclined to want to bring to the drawing, to be honest. So we'll just bring in a little bit of tone, just for a little bit of anatomy here and there. That'll do us for a 10. I have to admit, I'm having some trouble seeing the bottom half of her on my screen. Yeah, it is tough. Like, it's definitely there, Margot. Yeah, apologies for that. I should have thought about that. You see, it looks fine on my display, and I wasn't really thinking, but I could see how that could be a problem for people. Well, it gives you a great opportunity to draw from your imagination, right? All right. Interesting pose, though. I like it. Really interesting kind of compression at the bottom of the spine and the sacrum, right in this region here. it's almost like, you know, the upper torso is compressing into this region a little bit. You get this really nice kind of idea going through here. That's great. Thanks, Constantius. Glad to hear it. Cool. Field trip. Well, you guys, yeah. You know what I was thinking of doing? Here's a thought I'm going to throw out there. And I don't know what this even means yet because it's not a fully formed thought. But I'm thinking next summer of doing like a 5-day figure drawing intensive workshop in Florence. Like rent a house out in Tuscany or something and do every day, 5 for 5 days, do figure drawing, hit museums and all that type of thing. I think that could be a really fun little project. So I think it's too late to do it for this summer, but I'm thinking maybe summer 26, 1 week in Florence. So just throwing that out there. Maybe that's something some of you might like to do. Join me for. I like you twisting the torso. Thank you. Okay, let's keep cracking, because I feel like this one should be a 20. Noah, you're learning my ways of explaining my bad drawing. You're right, should have been a 20. Tina says, how about late September, early October, fewer tourists? Very good point. You know, that's a very valid point. Or spring, or early summer. That could be an option too. But I've spent many a time in Florence in the autumn or in the fall. It is a nice time of year to be there, and it is that bit quieter. It's got to be said. Although it doesn't really ever really get that quiet. That's why I was thinking of doing it out of the city a little, maybe out in Tuscany somewhere. A workshop, Lulu, basically, yeah, it would be like going to a class for 5 days. Like, you know, like 3-4 hours a day drawing, and then going to museums, looking at different sculpture, looking at different art and that type of thing. An art holiday, we call it. I know some models in Italy actually that are really good. So I think we could make it work. You would need like, you know, a minimum enrollment, I'm guessing, to make it financially viable, because they'd have to rent a place and the models and all of that, but I think it could be fun. Anyway, more to come on that, because I think I might pull the trigger on that idea for 26. I've been thinking about doing it for years. I did a workshop in Florence a few years ago. It was fun, but I'm thinking this would be cool. We could get into the weeds, so to speak. All right, let's do the next pose. So anyway, more on that to come. And of course, members and long-time viewers of the stream would get first dibs. 10 minutes, let's do this. But if there's enough interest, you know, it would really be, it would kind of, you know, kick me into gear to get it done. But I think it could be a lot of fun. Okay, let's see here. You guys can hear me rant in person. How about that? leg going away from us, this one obviously coming towards us. It's tricky. Iliac crest is about there, but like this is all gluteus medius, I think, for the most part, in this area here. Clavicle. Do you mean 25? Thank you, Tina. Yeah, 25. Yes, not 26. Getting a bit ahead of myself there. I heard that in Italy during tourist seasons, most of the Italians are also on vacation themselves, so there's no one there. Ha 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 ha, that's hilarious, Lulu. Yes, the Italians famously, I think is it the whole of August, they take off. But if you think that means that there's no one there, you'll be sadly disappointed. It's absolutely chock-a-block full of tourists, and plenty of Italians still serving said tourists. So they're clearly staggering their breaks. But yes, that is the idea. Love, love, love the way that her left arm is coming towards us, and the shape that this arm, this bicep, tricep combo sitting in here, and then this arm kind of coming up this way, up to the elbow here. We've got this kind of thing going on topography-wise. What a beautiful shape. Something like that, right? I probably haven't done it justice, but you know what I mean. Okay. If I'm not flat broke, might take you up on those dibs. Start saving now, Lulu. See, that's the key. I've given you a year and maybe close to a year and a half notice. If you save like, I don't know, $2 a day, more than enough. Okay, let's do this. I think this arm is actually coming up this way, like that. I should really add that. Cool choice of references. Thanks, Ben. Yeah, these have been fun ones, huh? Same thing happens in Paris, I think, too. Yeah, right. I think, yeah, Paris. Probably a good few of those European cities, right, that just get crazy hot. You know, I think Madrid too. It's probably a thing, and you can't blame them. You know, so it just doesn't matter how used to the heat you get. It doesn't mean you want to be dealing with it. So, rib cage coming down. Once again, we got that very kind of stretched out oblique, and then really like what we're seeing here is that gluteus medius. Same on this side. Wow, something like that. Okay. Where are we at? 8 minutes. Okay. Could this song be any more repetitive? Thank you. Cool. All right, I think we're coming to the end almost. Done. Though I suck at saving. Yeah, I know the feeling. Well, it's not easy. But it's like practice, right? You think, Lulu, if you had $1 for every stream you showed up to. you'd be doing well. All right, this is the final. I said 10, didn't I? I'm going to say 8. I'm changing my mind. Let's do an 8-minute pose. Because when I hit the 2-hour mark, I tend to lose a bit of steam. And I'm getting there. So I think 8 will do it. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do here, so I'm tilting her shoulders the other way. I'm tilting them this way. Because this axis going this way. Actually, sorry. Yeah, sorry. So if this leg is supporting, which it is, I'm actually going to tilt this way. Because I just want it to be a bit more visually interesting than it is. It feels quite static somehow in the reference. And then this leg coming down this way. This leg going away from us. Like so. What do I want to do here? This arm coming towards us, sitting in here, hand on the hip. Take care, Margot. Have a great weekend. Two hours is already pretty crazy. Stamina, draw, teach, and interact with chat. It's not too bad, but yeah, towards the end, you know, it's like you definitely find. Also, I think, you know, some sessions just mentally can be a bit more tiring than others. And it's not always super obvious why or what will be the, you know, the reason for that. Just happens. Yeah, I think today was a bit of a topsy-turvy start, all right. Somewhat recovered it about halfway. But yeah, I can tell I'm starting to make just bad choices. And that is usually an indication that I'm tired. Okay. Something like that. Did I say 8 minutes? Okay. We're getting there. I have exaggerated proportion a little bit with this one, just to have a bit of fun. We haven't done one of those proportion exaggeration sessions in a while. It could be a bit of fun. There's our 8. All right. Well, it is what it is. Okay, folks, we made it. Made it through another session. Hope that was useful. Been following your fundamentals videos, says Potato Kitty. What are your thoughts on using cubes for guidelines? And it's a pleasure to be here live. Well, I'll give you my quick thoughts. I think that cubes are fantastic. Cubes, cylinders, spheres, anything that can help break down the complex and make it simple. You know, I've used this kind of demo before, but the idea of, you know, especially if you're dealing with a pose that's foreshortened, the idea that, you know, this might be lower torso, it might be next to a cylinder as a simple shape, right? Something like that. Might be another cube, essentially, something like this, going in this direction. If we can think in those terms, if we can break, at least in our mind's eye, if we can break down the form into these simple ideas, you know, we can start thinking about things volumetrically, and we can start thinking about things as mass rather than a series, and volume rather than a series of shapes, right? This is relatively easy to light. If I've got a light source coming from this direction, you know, this could be in shadow. Might be kind of a core shadow there. This might be in shadow. This might be in shadow. I can light that conceptually in my head much easier than I can as a series of kind of ambiguous forms. Relatively straightforward to put anatomy on the top of this once you find the large ideas. So yes, so in a very long-winded answer to your question, I'm a big fan of thinking about things as trying to see them in my mind's eye as their simplest volumetric shape or form. You can do hybrids of these things too. I'll often do that. Something that's like some halfway between a cylinder and a cube kind of thing. It's like whatever gets you kind of to be thinking in these terms is really what's important. So yeah. Speaking of catching one of these from the start, Mondays, Thursdays, they start at 5 p.m. GMT, London time. I also plan, I know I've messed up last week, but I do plan on doing dailies too, which will also probably start at 5 p.m, but they'll be shorter and the reference will be available on the screen and that type of thing. So those, but you'll need to keep your notifications on for those because I tend to announce them on the day. Okay, so with all of that said, regular scheduled programming will continue on Thursday. I'll probably see you before then though, either tomorrow or Wednesday. How about that? Do me a favor, hit the like button on your way out the door if you wouldn't mind. It's always appreciated. And, you know, I'll see you next time. In the meantime, look after yourselves. Take care. Cheers, guys. Bye.